So, free will is a funny thing. The power to act without the constraint of necessity or fate. Endless possibilities in any given situation. I don't think we can fully comprehend endless, though. Researchers estimate that the average adult makes 35,000 choices in a day. That already sounds like way too many to me. I can care about 15,000 in a day. Maybe. But 35,000? I can't imagine even half of those actually matter to me. Just take this Waffle House menu, for example. There's over 30 items on this menu alone. Not only did I have to exhaust every other possibility before having to choose Waffle House, but now they're gonna use up even more of my 35,000 between the hash browns being scattered, smothered, or covered? Come on. By the end of most days, my wife doesn't even want to waste one of her 35,000 on what to watch or eat. She needs those for how many times to rewatch the TikTok of the dog that barks on Beat to Hamilton. But if I choose for us to watch King of the Hill and eat shrimp scampi, well, that wouldn't have been what she would have chosen. That's the thing, isn't it? We've got the free will to choose endlessly, but we don't want the boring choices. We want the sexy ones, the ones that matter. The one that results in our hash browns being smothered. You know, the perfect choice. But this video isn't about my hangover food preferences. It's about choice 35,001, or the last choice I ever thought I'd have to make about what I wanted to do with this YouTube channel. I'm Pooter, you're the viewer, and this is the video. In the kingdom of Vermund lives the Arisen, the prophesized killer of the dragon and savior of the world. Unfortunately for this world, their savior was George.
I don't think I'm special. My mother always said I'm not special.
George had lived his life thinking he wasn't special, and in lieu of saving the world, he spent most of his time with his best friend Jerry.
Why do people always say that? I hate everybody. Why would I like him?
Also, for some reason, Lara Croft was there, along with Augur. Saving the world is for suckets, George thought, as he waited to throw a rock at the military captain's head. This is much more fun. George simply liked to throw shit at things. He thought it was the pinnacle of comedy. And before long, most people had given up on him, believing that he would never do anything besides throw stuff. Until one day, George had what could only be described as a quarter-life crisis. It's all in the last video. Anyway, one day he threw a slightly different object at the right target, and all of a sudden, people loved that he had thrown something. He had unknowingly saved a village from a foul beast, and taken a step toward what the masses wanted from him. Things were looking up, and George's future was hanging in the balance. He liked that people enjoyed what he had done, but he didn't think he could actually continue saving the world because he had only ever practiced throwing stuff. So when he left his cozy inn the very next day to find another enraged beast in the town square, he had a choice to make. And more than anything, he wanted to get it right. Feeling emboldened, he decided to embrace his fate and try being a regular old hero. But George wasn't particularly practiced with the traditional methods of combat, and therefore, had a hard time. It even pissed some people off for some reason.
That's it! I've had enough! Clear off! And don't come back till you're ready to do business properly!
Wait, no. That was the wrong choice. Instead, feeling scared he would be unable to replicate his previous success, he joined the beast in indiscriminately killing citizens. With each death, his CPU grew faster, and his heart a more deep, black pit of... Wait, no. That one just felt bad for everyone. Feeling overwhelmed at the prospect of higher expectations, George decided to avoid the situation altogether and just go back to throwing rocks. He was happy throwing rocks, sure, but he couldn't help feeling like he gave up the opportunity to maximize his shit-throwing potential. Over the now distant screams from the town square, he thought maybe this was the wrong choice too. It was at this moment George realized that his options were exceedingly limited, as he was in a video game. See, video games love to provide players with choices so that the player is left feeling like they've had a real effect on events, only for you to realize that your mom is going to call this Pokemon both cool and cute anyway. In narrative-based games, the player traditionally has options that fit into one of 4 archetypes. The good option,
count on me, sir. Thank you, my friend.
The bad option.
Hey, Victoria.
What do you want, Max?
Don't say a word, Max.
Oh, wait. Hold that pose. And no filter needed before I post this.
The funny option.
Wear it? Like this?
And the option to just sit there like a psychopath, doing nothing until the game gets so uncomfortable that they just move the plot along for you. Developers simply cannot account for every single iteration that a truly free-willed player could think to do and craft a compelling story around it. Each minute choice, including actions, dialogue, timing, place, characters involved, and more I can't even think of, all result in exponentially branching paths that 40 people in an office can't anticipate. So they have to steer you in a direction they ultimately still control. I like to think of this as linear narrative-based games that provide choice are essentially handing you the ingredients to a delicious BLT sandwich. You can choose to put the tomato on first or the bacon. Hell, you could even skip the lettuce entirely, I don't care. It can be fun to make, and besides, you get a BLT out of it. It's not until we look around at all the other people that have also made the exact same sandwich that the choices start to feel empty, because no matter what, in the end, you were ever only going to make a BLT like everyone else. But as humans, we can't help but think, well, what if I used toasted ciabatta instead, and added a creamy avocado spread with just a hint of lemon and garlic, and oh baby, now this is something. The limited choice hinders our ability to pursue the what if of it all, and once we lose what if, we lose a huge amount of the ownership of our experience. Well, that's kind of depressing, thought George. So I'll never be able to actually find the perfect choice because I'm so limited. But hold on, George. Limited options aren't always a bad thing. In fact, many times we love limited options. There's a whole process for limiting the amount of choices we have to make in any given situation, known as delegating, wherein you just force someone else to make a decision so you don't have to. I know for my wife and I, we usually like it when the other person cuts choices down to 2, and then we make the final pick. It allows for some autonomy without having to spend too much mental energy going over every possibility, which can become exhausting or even paralyzing. Fewer options doesn't have to make the choice any less meaningful to you. Take, for example, Telltale's. Right off the bat, Telltale lets you know that your choices will affect the story in this game. Season 1 has you playing as recently convicted murderer Lee, who is thrust into the role of guardian for Clementine, a brave and kind-hearted 8-year-old whose parents are nowhere to be found. Throughout Season 1's 5 episodes, the game puts you in scenarios where you must choose what to do, usually giving you the classic 4 options. They present each choice as affecting the story and outcome of the game. Telltale even utilizes a graphic that says, "Clementine will remember that," to remind you that what you just chose to do or not do will have ramifications down the road. The choices are very limited, but that doesn't stop the final decision from making people cry. The choice is ultimately between Clementine shooting Lee, preventing him from turning into a walker, or leaving him to wander as a corpse forever. It still feels like an impactful choice because each player's decision as Lee and Clem up to this point inform the ramifications. If your Lee was an asshole the whole game, who cares if he was a zombie forever?
Clementine was just telling me about first grade.
Oh, how was that?
It's easy.
Well, yeah.
Clementine can go off into the sunset, thrilled to be without him.
Oh, and trying to be less of an asshole would serve you just fine.
And if your Lee was less of an asshole and more of a man seeking redemption in the apocalypse, protecting and caring for Clem, well then, you have to choose to either deny him his absolution or take Clementine's innocence away. This leaves many people conflicted and rightfully emotional at the death of something they've helped shape. There is no right or wrong answer. We could play every game ever made and believe that we had a unique experience. Until we compare what happened with other players and realize the inevitability of our actions. Telltale themselves highlight this by showing you what other players chose at key moments at the end of each episode. Assigning numbers and popularity to choices immediately made me feel that there was a best path. And then you go online and see the full choice tree for the entire season looks like this. When forced to choose between saving Sean or Duck, you could initially move on, wondering what would have happened if you actually saved Sean instead. But talking with a friend or watching another person play quickly reveals that Sean dies no matter what, and the only difference is if Kenny likes you more or less because of who you chose. And I'm not saying don't talk about games with anyone. I mean, here I am, talking to you about games. But just the act of comparison detracts from your experience feeling tailored and fulfilling. And it allows the what if I was wrong to turn into Yeah, I was totally wrong. But in some cases, there is a wrong choice. Sometimes you made the wrong choice hours ago, and it's only until you try to get past Measurehead that you realize if you successfully punch him, the correct choice is to do the 360 flying kick. But you chose wrong, and your stats aren't high enough to even attempt again. This isn't just in choice-driven narrative games though. Across the industry and genres, people have labeled different games with good or bad or even true endings. There's even very extensive guides on how to get an exact ending in many games, because people want the outcome they were hoping for. Even if a developer intends for one of the endings to be canon, that kind of undermines the whole point of giving players a choice, because people want to get it right. It's like the old adage, if there's a best ending, there's a way to get Ronnie to marry you. But that's just for crafted narratives. So how do you increase the factor of actual free will and choice in a game without a set story? Multiplayer games provide a unique foil to crafted narrative games in nearly every way. The story in multiplayer games is usually not what makes people play them, and oftentimes doesn't even exist. Instead of the player solely interacting with the environment, it's now about the player interacting with other players within the same environment. Of course, there are cooperative games that are story-focused, but for the sake of this video, I'm talking about MMOs and competitive multiplayer games. Second-to-second decisions you make are critical to your end experience. What character to play, items to use, when to use them, where to go, and how to get there all contribute to the outcome. While your direct input contributes greatly to the outcome, the end you're building to often doesn't have a huge or lasting impact. You made all of the right choices this time. You got the kill. You got the win, or you didn't. Your choices and the choices of your teammates the whole time directly affected what happened. But what comes next? You start over, you join another lobby, or you never come back. And once you stop inputting, the experience doesn't last with you for very long. You had many choices to make, but the outcome didn't mean as much to you. So why do people keep coming back? The direct comparison to other players. How you did versus how everyone else did, and the drive to continue doing the best each game, which effectively is comparing your choices to everyone else's. People get so driven to this end that in these games there are agreed upon best practices and ways to do things. You may know them as a meta in video games refers to the use of specific strategies, items, or characters to improve the player's chances of being successful or winning. It essentially establishes a most effective way to play the game. It is centered around maximizing numbers and stats within the game itself to maximize player potential. Once a meta is established and you become aware of it, it's difficult to play the game any other way, whether that's because other strategies simply can't compete, or because other players refuse to engage with you unless you conform. This can be seen in Final Fantasy XIV, a game I have zero idea about, but one that my friend Audrey V, winner of Rookie Rumble 2, knows nearly everything about. And after explaining how the PvE mode has different metas for which level raid you're going into, she then said, and I quote, "Time for the real shit." PvP. She explained that a good 4-stack of Dark and Durg can destroy an enemy team of idiot babies and frontlines. And AST sucks to go against in ranked crystalline conflict because it can cover up a lot of misplays. You normally need to manage your LB to help steamroll, but in Rival Wings you have it all the time. But LP is a different world with mostly community-driven events outside of CCRC. And at this point there were so many acronyms flying around, I didn't know UP from DWN. But I think this just goes to show that to an outside person, trying to even get started poses a hurdle of learning how you're supposed to play. The options are there, but the community has effectively established what to use, when, and where. This can be seen in virtually every MMO or competitive multiplayer game. Having a meta effectively removes most of the player's choices on how to interact with the game again. For new players or players who didn't want to go along with the meta, it can leave them wishing they would have done it differently. Even if they had fun, it wasn't the best way they could have experienced it. And usually fan bases are not shy to tell you that. But surely there is somewhere in games where you have complete freedom of choice that matters, and you can just play how you want to, right? Sandbox games utilize a term called emergent gameplay. It's essentially where a developer provides systems the player can interact with at their own pace, in their own way, and in combination with one another to create an experience more unique to each player. They can be multiplayer or single player. They can have a story or none at all. However, they all have a common thread of allowing players to choose how and when they interact with their environment, and lead to consequences that are directly related to the choices they've made. In No Man's Sky, I chose to disregard the tutorial messages and discovered that I can shoot other ships without realizing there was a faction standing mechanic. Well, after blowing up a Gek Sentinel, the rest of the fleet started to fight back against me and my group. Overwhelmed, we fled into a nearby station, where I assumed a new identity to lay low from the angered Gek fleet. That's how I became Bonto was a simple creature, finding peace on a planet with sentient goop that slowly leaked out of their bubble cocoons, and wanting to leave behind his past of wanton violence for more pointed violence. He also became a father by continuously running goop he found through the refiner until he got sentient mold, which he then refined one more time to turn all of his children he created into money. With his newfound blood mold fortune, he decided to continue his adventures by visiting a new planet where they had frickin' sandworms from Dune. And all of that was possible because I was allowed to not interact with the tutorials, engage in combat, then utilize the character customization, the interplanetary travel, and the crafting mechanics all in my own way to create something that really felt unique to me. I think the best ones to do it mix together short-term consequences, like totally ganking Asterion from the rip and getting his kit, with long-term payoffs, like never knowing the cold embrace of a conniving vamp daddy. Baldur's Gate 3 and Tears of the Kingdom are two examples of recent games that totally nailed choices mattering and being impactful, while also not allowing what other players were doing to negatively impact how you felt about your game. Both were celebrated widely by their communities, and had a huge boom of content, strategies, and consequences being shared. But rather than feeling like a set of best ways to play, they felt more like tools you could use if you wanted to in your own game. Not all games can be 100-hour epic worlds with all these systems to interact with, and that's okay. Games like Doki Doki Literature Club limit your choices but stay with you for days, weeks, even years later. The Apex Legends of the world give you a lot of free agency within their systems, but the experience doesn't build anywhere meaningful to you. And games like XCOM let every choice lead to something that will get you killed, which is why you just reload and save scum until you get what you wanted. So, what can all of this teach us about? Real life is messy, complicated, and unfair. Choices in our lives are rarely boiled down to 4 clearly defined options. Instead, we get to experience the exponentially branched paths. This also means that we have to balance how many choices we make. Otherwise, we'll get fatigued and come home not wanting to choose what to watch or eat. It's hard to remember all the time, but all of our small choices throughout each day, collectively, do matter. I believe they make us who we are and inform how we're going to handle those big choices. But we also need to remember that, unlike in games, we don't all have access to the same sets of tools and opportunities. If I wanted to go play in the NBA as a 5'9", 28-year-old with one 8th grade season of experience, that's just not realistic. But I can choose to start playing pickup with some friends that also missed their chance to go number 1 overall. Life has no guide on how to achieve the outcome you want from your big choices. There's guidelines and steps you can take to make things more realistic, but there's not one way to achieve anything. I think that's hard to accept. In an age where we can readily see what everyone else is choosing and achieving, it's easy to look at the circumstances in our lives that aren't fulfilling right now and think we've made the wrong choices. During those times, it's important to remember what's right for us. Take good for good. If your choices make you happy, let that be good enough. Stop chasing perfect because it doesn't actually exist. There is no meta for life. And in fact, we often need to be wrong or fail in order to gain the skills to succeed later. And sometimes the fear of not knowing what could happen is the thrill that you need to make a choice that will help you grow. When I was in summer band camp my sophomore year of high school, a girl came up to me, introduced herself, and declared that she was to start her mark right next to mine for the first song. We spent the next year as friends, and all the while, I knew I wanted to be more. I found myself at a band competition where I decided this was the day I was going to finally confess my feelings to her. Well, I went all day, and I was no closer to telling her how I felt. I just kept making the choice to do nothing because I was scared that if I made this choice and the outcome wasn't what I wanted, there was no going back. An entire branch of possibility gone. So at the end of the day, there I was in my mom's car, about ready to be driven home. But you know, even in our world of technically infinite choices, there are moments in your life where every bone in your body tells you what you should do. And in those moments, perfection be damned, you just have to go for it. So I chose the path that scared me, and I made up some lame excuse that I accidentally took Brock's mouthpiece, and I just had to give it back to him right then. I got out of the car and I ran. I ran back to where I had last seen her, and in the last glimpses of light, I saw her walking away and I tapped her on the shoulder. And in a rush of urgent emotion and panting breath from running, I said, "I really like you and I don't know how you feel, but I just wanted to let you know that and I really like you." And she very calmly replied, "Well, I like you too." And we've been making our sandwiches together ever since. So, what about George? Well, with his limited but realistic choices, trying to enjoy the immediate while prepping for the long term, and choosing the path that gives him just the right amount of butterflies, George is trying to use his throwing skills to give the people what they want, the way he wants to do it. And so am I. I'm going to try to thread the needle of providing a story with jokes, informing on a topic, and hopefully imparting a lesson all in one. And if that totally fails and I fall on my face, I can always go back to just throwing shit. This is Pooter, learning lessons the hard way, so you don't have to. Thanks for watching. So the whole Seinfeld thing never really came into play. Why did he make us from Seinfeld? I don't know. Odd choice. Odd choice.